Catherine here from Catherine Crochets, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to work join as you go ribbing onto the side or the end or the bottom of your crochet project, such as a beanie like this Whittaker beanie. I'll just fold down the ribbing so you can see what it looks like when you've added it on. So in this project, the top part of the beanie is made first, and then this ribbing is added on afterwards using a join as you go technique. You can apply it onto any project. It doesn't have to be a beanie. It could be a blanket, it could be a garment like a sweater or a cardigan, but it's a really great way of making the ribbing and joining it on all in one go, so you don't have to sew your ribbing on separately. The ribbing itself is made with double crochet in UK terms, or single crochet in US terms, worked into the back loop only, back and forth in rows, and then you're as you get to the end of each row, at this end you do some slip stitches to join it onto your work. So I'm going to take you through this step by step and show you exactly how it's done. Now here's another beanie that I've made, just the top part of, and it's all ready to have its ribbing added onto it. As you can see, it's just in opposite colours to the previous one. So I'm going to be adding the ribbing on using this white yarn, so that the join of the ribbing matches where I've joined each round of my crochet. I'm going to start by joining my yarn to the last stitch of the first round of this main part of the hat. So you could join your yarn at any point and work your ribbing around, because we're working in a round. But if you're working on a project like this that is in the round and you want your join to match up, then join it to the last stitch of that first round that you did for the main part of your project. I've just marked it with a safety pin so that I can find it easily. So I'll take my yarn, and to join it, I just insert my hook into the bottom of that stitch and wrap the yarn around my hook and pull it through. Now the first stage of the ribbing is to chain. In this case, make 14 chains. You could make more than this if you want your ribbing to be deeper, or you could make fewer chains for a project where you don't need quite so much ribbing. But for this project, I'm making 14 chains. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Then I'm going to make the first row of my ribbing. I'm just turning my work around so I'm working in a natural direction. I'm going to make the first row of my ribbing by working double crochet, UK double crochet stitches or US single crochet stitches into, I'll skip the first chain, and then I'll work 13 double crochet all the way back along this chain. And when I'm working into the chain, you can see this is the top of the chain with 2 strands. I work my stitches into the single bump on the back. So starting in the second chain from the hook, I'm going to work 13 UK double crochet or US single crochet stitches all the way back along the chain. 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to keep going, and then I'll meet you at the end of this chain and show you the next step. And I'm just making the final UK double crochet or US single crochet into that very first chain, and now I've got my row of 13 double crochet work back along that chain back towards the hat. Now the next thing to do is join this ribbing into the bottoms of the stitches. Now to do that, I just make 2 slip stitches into the bottoms of the next 2 stitches around the hat. So 1 into each of them. So I just insert my hook into the next stitch and slip stitch through, and then into the stitch after and slip stitch through. And I'm going to turn my work around, and I'm going to be working back along this first row of double crochet. So turn it round. Now I'm going to skip the 2 slip stitches that I've just made, and I'm going to work double crochet stitches into the back loop only of this first row of double crochet. And it's important to work them into the back loop because that's how you create the ribbing effect. So it's, see the 2 slip stitches there? I'll just move my hook out of the way. 1, 2, I'm going to skip those and then work a double crochet or US single crochet into the back loop. So there's 2 loops here on the top. The back loop is the one at the back, and I'll just work a UK double crochet or US single crochet into that back loop. So we're going to have 13 altogether because we made 13 stitches in that first row. So 1, 2, and we'll work them all into the back loops. 3, 4, 5, 6, and I'm going to keep going and meet you at the end of this row. I'm just working final 13th double crochet back loop only into that final stitch from the previous row, and that's it. I've created another row of ribbing, and you can see that it's where we've worked into the back loop only, we've got this rib here from the front loops that we haven't worked into. So we're going to turn our work around and we're going to work back along this ribbing. So we start off with 1 chain, which doesn't count as a stitch, and then we're going to work 13 double crochet or US single crochet into the back loops again of these 13 stitches from the previous row. So insert your hook into the back loop and work a UK double crochet or a US single crochet, and you keep going all the way along to create the next row of your ribbing. Now do be careful and make sure that you keep your stitch count the same in every row of ribbing, otherwise the width of your ribbing is going to change. Shrinking is the most common issue where people miss a stitch. So you do want to make sure that you have the same number of stitches in every row of ribbing to make sure that it's the same width all the way around your work. Let me just keep going until we've worked all 13 of them. So I'll make a few more stitches and then meet you at the end of this row. So I'm just working my final double crochet back loop only, or single crochet back loop only in US terms, into that last stitch. So I've made my 3rd row of ribbing stitches now, and then we're going to join it onto the bottom of the hat. So I turn my work around like this, identify the next 2 stitches around the hat and work a slip stitch into each of them. So I insert my hook into that stitch, yarn over and pull a loop all the way through, and then the same into the next stitch. So we've got 2 slip stitches, and then we're going to do exactly the same as we did on the second row. So we turn our work around so that we can work back along the ribbing, and we're going to skip those 2 slip stitches and work 13 double crochet back loop only all the way back to the end of this row. So skip the 2 slip stitches, insert your hook into that last double crochet or single crochet from the previous row, yarn over and pull through, and then keep working in the back loop only all the way along until you reach the end of the row. Once, it can be a little bit fiddly when you start this technique for the first time, but once you get into the swing of it, it's not really that hard, and it's quite nice and meditative. I quite enjoy the stage where you get to add the ribbing onto the end of your project, and gradually you see it grow row by row as you work all the way around. So I've now got to the end of that ribbing row with the last stitch into the back loop only. So I'm going to chain 1 and turn my work, or you can turn and chain 1, and then I'm just going to work 13 all the way back along, skip the chain, just working into the double crochets or single crochets from the previous row, and work another 13 double crochet into the back loop only. All the way along the row. Now some people might find, it depends on your own personal tension, the project that you're making, which stitches it's involved in the main part. Some people might find that they need to adjust their hook size for the ribbing compared to the hook size that they've been using for the rest of the project. So if you make a few rows of ribbing and find that it's either pulling your project in too tight, or perhaps the ribbing is too loose and it's wider than it's going to end up wider than the project that you're adding it onto, then you might want to either go up or down a hook size depending on whether you want to increase or decrease the height of your stitches in the ribbing. So just watch out for that after you've worked a few rows and see whether any adjustment to your hook size is needed. So I'll show you again when we get to the end of this row how we join it on to the bottom of the hat. Let's get a little bit more yarn. Got one more double crochet to work into that last double crochet back loop only, and then as before we're going to work 2 slip stitches, 1 each into each of the next 2 stitches from your work. 1, 2, and then we turn round again and work back along the work. If you make sure that you always turn your work in the same direction, either clockwise or anti-clockwise, then you'll end up with the same pattern, the same way your yarn moves at the end of each row. Obviously this ribbing is going to be turned up, so you're not really going to see it, but if you want to make sure it's as neat as possible and the same all the way around, then just make sure when you turn your work you're always turning it in the same direction each time. And then as before we work double crochet back loop only, or single crochet back loop only if you prefer US terms, all the way along to the end of the row, making sure, as I said before, that in each row we have 13 stitches, or however many you're making for your project. And then we reach the last one, chain 1 and turn again, and you just continue in this way all the way around or along the edge of your project, depending on which project it is you're working on, until you get back to the start. And in this case, as we're working round, we're going to want to join our ribbing, this first row of ribbing, to the final row of ribbing when we get back to the start. So I'm going to keep going all the way around with adding the ribbing onto this hat, and then I'll show you how to join your last row of ribbing to your first row of ribbing when we get back to the start. So if you need to, do pause the video now and go back and watch how to work these first few rows of ribbing to make sure that you've got the hang of it. Feel free to watch that as many times as you want, then add the ribbing to your own project and come back and see how to then join your last row of ribbing onto your first row of ribbing at the very end. So I've just finished working the ribbing all the way around the hat, and I've finished with a row of stitches coming out from the bottom of the hat and ending here. And I'm now going to show you how to join this last row of ribbing onto the bottom, or the chain from the bottom of this first row of ribbing. So we're just going to do this using a simple slip stitch join. So you hold the 2 rows of ribbing together like this, just pinch them together so you've got the top of the last row of ribbing in front of you, and then the row of chain stitches from that first row behind them. And then we're just going to work along making a slip stitch through the outer loops, so the front loop from this front row of stitches and the back loop of these chains. So I'll just tighten up the yarn on my hook slightly, and I'm going to insert my hook through the front loop of that first stitch, through the back loop of the last chain stitch. You might want to just count along to check that you're working in exactly the right place. So if you remember, there should be 13 stitches. There were 13 stitches, so we'll count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So it's this back loop here, and we'll wrap the yarn over our hook and pull through all of those loops, and then we'll just work along doing the same thing. So insert the hook through the front loop of this front row of stitches and the back loop from the chain stitches. Take care not to make your slip stitches too tight here, otherwise it can cause the fabric to pucker. So you just want them nice and even, working your way all the way along. And as this ribbing had 13 stitches, we're just going to be making 13 slip stitches to join them. So we're getting there now, about halfway along. So I'll keep making these slip stitches all the way along, and then meet you again at the end after I've made these next few stitches. So I've got one more to go now. Make that final slip stitch, and then we'll just snip off the yarn and fasten off. And then you weave in the end. This is going to be the wrong side for this project when we turn up the ribbing. So you can see that's what the join looks like on the other side. Obviously, if you were doing a different project where this was the right size, then you'd just thread the yarn onto your needle, stitch it through, sew it through to the other side of your work, and sew it in on that side if that's the wrong side. So for example, this end at the moment I've got on this side of my work, so I'm going to just pass it through onto the wrong side of my ribbing, because I'm going to be turning the ribbing over like this, so it's inside out, as it were, compared to the rest of the hat. And as you can see, that just joins the ribbing neatly and it blends in with the rest of the ribbing, and this seam is lined up with the join, which isn't that visible either around the rest of the hat. So if we turn it over, the front of the hat looks like this. Now, as I said, the hat pattern is the Whittaker Beanie. So if you're interested in making the whole hat, I'll pop a link to the pattern for that below. It's available on both Etsy and Ravelry. And as well as this tutorial for the ribbing, I also have a tutorial showing you how to do the technique that's used for these colourwork section of the hat. So I'll pop a link to that tutorial below. If you've enjoyed this video, please like and feel free to subscribe to my channel. I also have an email list which you're very welcome to sign up to. You'll receive 2 free patterns when you sign up, and you'll also get a monthly newsletter and pattern release news and exclusive discounts. I share the biggest discounts on my pattern only with those who are on my email list, so it's well worth signing up. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial and found it helpful. If you've got any questions, please just let me know in the comments below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks very much for watching. Bye bye.